right, so I want to thank everybody for being here. We're excited tonight to have some exciting guests and to talk about some things that are important to us. This is part of our Liberty Salon series that we do at the Fat City Gallery. And I'll mention just a brief history of how this came together was that I met Jackie in my former location and also through our great friends at the frame shop here in town, Suitable for Framing. We aligned on a lot of ideas and talked about the importance of art and the importance of activism and the importance of protecting the environment. And part of our transition to creating this new space was to create a place where people can come talk about things that they're passionate about. And I think Jackie is clearly passionate about her mission, and I wanted to give a venue to introduce some of my friends and my clients and the rest of the community into the important work that she's doing. I just want to mention two little anecdotes, actually three, that I heard today alone. One is that there's 1,300 people missing in Western Germany from floods and climate change and disasters. And then I was talking with Mike Marold about the loss of snow and ice in the Pacific Northwest with the crazy temperatures. And it made me think of a cartoon I saw of Bart Simpson where he says, "Oh my God, it's the hottest summer I've ever experienced." And then, of course, the voice of wisdom, Homer Simpson, comes in and says, "It's the coldest summer for the rest of your life." And I think that thinking about the future, not only what's happening now and what's happened in the past, what's important is what we do moving forward. And I think Jackie's group is a great example of actual concrete change of things that we can embrace as a community. So with that all said, I'm going to hand it over to Jackie.
Thank you, DJ, and thank you for doing this for me. It means so much because when I talk about what I do and what the organization does, people really do get inspired. And they get inspired because we see a future where humanity does better. And we understand that if we don't take care of our world, we're not taking care of ourselves.
And so my organization, the Global Warming Mitigation Project, is about reducing greenhouse gases in our atmosphere. It's about avoidance, it's about drawing them down, and it is about living on a planet that we are cognizant of what that carbon cycle means to us. And the science is definitive. I recently got a master's in energy policy and climate science. It's what inspired me to actually do something about the implementation. And we're not doing enough. And we all know that, like, oh yeah, we can, get an electric car. We can, maybe even sign up for renewable energy on our energy bill. And we all are asking ourselves all the time. I mean, don't you guys ask yourself all the time, can I do more? Is there more I can do? And you know what? There is. And you have to get out there and do it. And I've brought a couple people here today to talk, and we also have some artists who have generously donated, the work for this event tonight that you can look at. And I have some words from Pete McBride that I'm going to read you that we've actually become quite close just in the last few days about climate because he's very passionate about water and the climate systems. And I know a lot of you know Pete and respect him and his work. And also we'll get to Isa Cato and Mike Marold's stuff too. But I want to bring up my friend Patty Clapper, who is working on policy. Because we all want to know what policies need to change in order for us to not really have to do much, but to have those change around us. So I'll talk more about what I do, but right now I want to hear what the county's doing. So welcome, Patty, for me.
Jackie's always so well-spoken. I can't put on my sunglasses. I have to put on my reading glasses. I went to my climate action department at Pickens County and asked them to give me some idea of what Pickens County is doing throughout our departments. And I was just speaking with the new city councilman, John Doyle, just a few minutes ago. And he said before he got elected to city council, he didn't really realize all the efforts that the city was doing as far as the environment and climate protection. And I think that's something that we as local governments, I'm looking at Ann Mullen, who was a previous city councilwoman, and my cohort in crime, Greg Postman, who sits on the board of commissioners with me, thinking we need to better educate our community as to what we're doing and what we can use help with and any ideas that the community might have to bring back to us. So these are just a few of Pickens County climate action initiatives. Reducing embodied energy use by digitalizing processes. What does that mean? It means our finance department has implemented a fully digital system for processing invoices, checks, and budgeting. Sounds very simple, was not an easy process, but it helps to streamline things and make them more energy efficient at the end of the day. Community development has implemented a paperless digital system for processing and issuing planning cases, permits, and conducting inspections. Also saves energy, saves people from driving around. All of it adds up at the end of the day. Land use and building codes. New building energy code requires homes that are 70% more emissions-free than those built under 2016 standards. We're working very hard towards net zero residential buildings by 2030. Land use codes have been updated to facilitate renewable energy and prioritize passive solar buildings. Requirements for energy storage have been implemented to facilitate renewable grid load balance, improve resiliency of the community, and put in place the infrastructure needed for a net zero carbon electric grid by 2030. Building codes require new residences to pre-wire for EV chargers. Sounds simple, but if you plan ahead, it's a lot easier to do it ahead of time than after the fact. Land use codes require new residents to plan for PV systems on the roof and pre-wire for them. So set it up. So if you don't do it in the future, somebody's going to come along and it's going to be ready to go. Our solid waste center, we were just talking about that, implemented a construction and demolition ordinance that requires a deposit for construction projects and for tracking their waste and diversion rates via a new digital system. One of the biggest waste systems we have that comes out to our landfill is construction demolition waste. It is filling up our landfill at an expedited rate these days, and if we lose our landfill, sounds like a really silly thing to have to think about, we'll have to put our waste on trucks and haul it somewhere else, and what is that going to do to climate change and to greenhouse gas emissions in this community? At the solid waste center, they're annually expanding individual compost rates. We're doing a heck of a job via community outreach, expanding composting infrastructure to increase capacity, raising tipping fees to incentivize sorting loads to increase diversion rate at the solid waste center. So many of these things sound simple, but when you're a local government, you have to reach out to the community and get your community on board with each and every little action, big action, policy change, new policy that you make. Our fleet, which is our fleet management, is all the county trucks and vehicles you see on the road between the landfill, the airport, road and bridge, snow removing. They've implemented a fleet tracking system that allows for individual vehicle fuel and mileage to be continually tracked. Implemented a GIS-based idling time monitor for all industrialized vehicles to analyze idling times and help to develop policies to reduce emissions. And we're gradually replacing, step by step, all of our passenger vehicles in the county and in the city, we're going to work with them, with EVs. We're conducting greenhouse gas inventories of the county as a whole every 3 years. We're conducting internal operation greenhouse gas inventories every year. We started in 2019 to pinpoint areas for emissions reductions, primarily covering fleet, our facilities, and our commuters. Climate Action Plan is to push for emissions reductions in internal operations and outreach for emissions reductions in the community. Pickens County is working within the county government itself, but we are constantly, continually, and advancing our community outreach. Because as Jackie said, we all need to be doing this. We cannot do it alone. We need to be doing this together. Small steps lead to big steps, lead further and further, and it's a matter of working with your local governments and helping to educate the local government and allowing the local government to help to educate you as the community. So thank you. We appreciate you all being here. We really appreciate the efforts that Jackie puts forward. She's pretty awesome, guys. Thank you.
Thanks, Patty. And we do know that we need to push our elected officials to do more. But another thing that is so important and why we're kind of here tonight is the idea of how art moves us, art and culture, and how these artists, and did everybody get a chance to see the works that are Pete McBride, Issa Cato, and Mike Marolt in there? I don't know if you got a chance to see them, but Pete McBride could not be here tonight, and I'm going to read what he sent me to say. He says, "Tell him, thanks for coming." I wish I could be there, but I'm in the road speaking about drought, conservation, and of course climate. Apparently Pete does not have any kind of spell check on his phone. He says the 3 images are from his ongoing work on water, land, and the power of silence. The mountain image represents the headwaters, which, as you all know, is directly impacted from a change in climate with less snowpack. And now dust on the snow that is exasperating the situation with a quicker, earlier runoff. FYI, he did a story for National Geographic on it yesterday on their site. And okay, so you can go to Pete's site and see this. Second image represents land, our ancestral connection to it as seen in the 900-year-old Puebloan granaries lit up by the laser lights for the image. Beautiful image in there. I hope you saw it. And the canyon country, which he's learned firsthand from an 800-mile hike through the length of the canyon, Grand Canyon. Its value as a cut-door, open-aired cathedral and classroom or biodiversity, geology, archaeology, starlight, and science. The third image is of the Colorado River Delta. Once the largest desert estuary is now a dry and dead landscape. It shows what happens when we ask too much of our limited resources. They simply disappear. All our collective actions play a hand in climate change, which ripples far and wide in all our wild places that support our water and biodiversity, which at the end of the day sustain us. Practicing reduction with all fronts by all of us is critical to keep our big blue home from burning down. Again, from Pete, thanks for coming, and sorry to miss you all, and enjoy the event. So I also had a little conversation with Pete about how those images, to me, were representing the states of matter. They're the snow in the solid state and the liquid running down the Colorado River, and then the evaporation as our world is evaporating, our water is evaporating into the skies. So with that, I'd like to bring DJ back up to say something about Issa Cato's work and how she touches our hearts with her colors.
And I'm going to keep it really brief, but she wished she could be here tonight, but she wanted to say that the impacts from the climate crisis are our new normal: melting glaciers, devastating floods, super tornadoes, and mega hurricanes. And then there's fire. Issa Cato lives in Colorado, where the threat of seasonal wildfire and drought are as American as the 4th of July and lemonade stands. These 2 paintings inside were inspired by the fire mapping of hotspots depicting the backdrafts of a local wildfire, the Grizzly Creek Fire. And I think we all experienced this with the recent fires in the valley and nearby. And I think, that was one of the first events where a lot of people began to realize how close to home climate change has happened here. And I think that, you can look at the Colorado River drying up, you can look at the North Pole melting, the South Pole melting, but having a fire in the immediate area was a real wake-up call, and I think that that's unfortunately going to continue to happen. I want to bring up Mike Marolt, to talk about his photos from the other side. Go for it. Should have done a better intro.
Oh, that's okay. Jackie, I told Jackie 2 days ago when she asked me to do this, no spotlights, and look what I got. Anyway, my name is Mike Marolt, and I'm not an activist. I'm not a scientist, and based on the reason that Jackie asked me to be here, high altitude skiing, you could make a pretty strong argument that I'm not that bright either. But one thing that I do have is about 40 years and almost 60 expeditions to the greater ranges of the world. And this is not the first event that people have asked me to bring my experience, having the opportunity to go to places and then several years later go back to see the contrast of how drastic the climate is changing. And I mean, there are so many examples that I could give. So I'd like to talk about one, which was on Mount Everest. And on Mount Everest, I was fortunate enough to go in 2003 to the north side, and I was really nervous about this because there are two obstacles on the north side. You've got to hike from 17,000 up to 21,000 just to get to the peak. And along that path, you have to cross a glacier because the pinnacles of ice, there's a 4-mile stretch where the pinnacles of ice are these huge shark teeth penitentes that just went for a good 5 miles up the glacier. And at the toe, it's a cliff, and there's a huge torrent of a river that crosses, and you got to cross that. So you got to go early in the morning, and you have to go when the glacier's not melting so that you can walk through this river. And if you fall in the river, you're going to fall in a hole, and you'd fall, 100, 200, whatever feet into the glacier. Then when you get to the other side, the other obstacle, and these are monumental obstacles that climbers for generations have feared. You have to climb underneath a huge, probably 500-foot Serac wall of ice high up on the cliffs, and it calves off, and so you have to run at 18,000 feet for 20 minutes to get past this. So on the first trip, we went up, and the river was as hairy as everybody said. It was very scary, and we got across that, and then we got to the other side of the glacier, and sure enough, the debris was all over the slopes down below, and so we got some water and some food, put our packs on, and put our noses down, and running for 20 minutes at 18,000 feet is a pretty monumental task, and we got across it. So the short version of the long is, we didn't succeed on that trip, and we plan to go back. And we plan to go back in 4 years. And for 4 years, that haunted me. I mean, I could just remember for 4 years looking up at that nasty Serac ice glacier. I mean, we're talking about a glacier face that is half as big as the Bells, and it just would crash down. And then also crossing that glacier. And 4 years later, we got back and we crested up, and I keep looking for these big penitentes, and I keep looking for this big river, and completely gone. The glacier for 5 miles, and these penitentes were 50 to 200 feet tall, had completely melted, and the torrent river that we had to cross was a little ditch that we just stepped over, and the glacier was just silt for as far as you could see. And then when we looked up at that huge Serac, I mean, it was basically a mountain of ice, completely gone. And so there are just examples of that are in the greater ranges that just really are indications of how serious the problem is. Something that was an obstacle for generations of climbers had completely disappeared in 4 years. Right now, up in the Pac Northwest, they've had just the heat wave has just been crazy. And I was just talking to a buddy that is a climber and a skier up there who goes up to the ice fields all summer to climb and ski. And the normal melt on the ice fields up there in an entire summer is anywhere from 5 to 10 feet. And in 3 weeks last month, they lost 18 feet of ice. And that extended back for miles. So it's a huge problem, but the problem is not isolated to the greater ranges. I was just talking to my brother Roger, and we grew up here, and our stomping grounds were always up Castle Peak. And when I started climbing at age 12, my dad started taking me up to Castle Peak, and he actually in the 60s, that was a permanent snowfield on a thick layer of ice. I mean, it wasn't technically a glacier, but it was an ice field. And he actually had lifts that he put up there for a ski racing camp that he wanted to run up there. And so from age 12 till about age 25, that's where we trained. And we could go up there, and it was just this beautiful white snowfield from the bottom all the way almost up to the top of Castle Peak, and halfway up, I don't know how many people here have been up there, but you climb up a face and then it kind of flattens out. And up until about 20 years ago, that was a big dome of ice that had a beautiful lake in the ice on top of it. And if you go up there now, there has been at least over the last 20 years, 100 feet of ice melt. And all of these peaks around here look like they're just rock, but that is all glacier underneath those rocks. And all of that permafrost and all of that ice has melted. And when you look at the rivers, especially the mountain streams like Castle and Maroon, they're not what they were when I was growing up here. I mean, they're completely different just because all of that ice and that permafrost has melted. So the climate change is real, and I'm telling you not as a scientist, but I'm telling you as somebody that's been out there and touched it and witnessed it, that these are just a couple of stories. But you could go throughout the Andes, you can go throughout Pakistan, you can go throughout Nepal and all throughout Asia. And glaciers that I looked at as a young man are melting and disappearing completely. As an adult, when I look at them, it's just how in the world, we're talking about hundreds and thousands of feet of ice has just completely disappeared. So I said that I wasn't an activist, and I'm not, but I do get these questions a lot because of my experience. And so I appreciate Jackie asking me to come and talk. And she and I were talking today, and it's like, well, what can you do? Well, this is something that I can do. I can share my experiences, but there's something that all of us can do, and we just have to figure it out. And I think that as it relates to what's going on with climate change, you've got people like Jackie and a lot of other people that are forming these businesses and organizations. They are scientists. They are intelligent. They do know the facts, and it's up to us to do all we can on an individual basis, but we need to start reaching out to these people, not only for advice, but we need to reach out to them with our pocketbooks, and we need to fund them, and we need to hyper-accelerate this, because when you look at the heat wave up in the Pac Northwest, and you look at how that ice is melting, and you look at how these glaciers are melting all around the world, we unfortunately are living in climate crisis right now. It's not something that's going to happen. We're living in the start of something that if we don't do something really quick, it might not be terrible for us, but it's going to be terrible for our kids, and it's going to be really terrible for their kids. So thanks, Jackie, for doing what you do.
Thanks, Mike. That was a powerful story. So I hope you guys are sitting there thinking, what can I do? How can I do more? And if you are thinking that, I can tell you, come talk to us. We actually find and fund climate solutions around the world. And we analyze them. We see what they're doing to draw down emissions, to avoid emissions, and to really address the problem. And this is a big problem. So we need to look at a lot of different solutions. So my team, who's here, Emily, raise your hand, Paige, Barbara, Andre, Mike. Who am I? Did I miss anyone? and myself. Eric Rigsby is a Navigation Council member, and there are a couple others around here that are experts in the climate space. If you don't know what to do, you're not trying hard enough to do something, because there are a lot of solutions out there. You can get involved. You can change what kind of energy you buy. You can change the kind of transportation you use. You can divest from fossil fuels in your investment. I met somebody tonight, Chris Tuller, who's right over there, who is working on investment opportunities in this space, and more and more organizations are popping up. We've actually supported a couple through our prize. So if you feel like this is important, do more. Get more involved and understand that it is so urgent and it is such a big issue. And we need every single one of you and every single one of the people you know and every single one of the people they know to really get involved and help us get to a place where we see that better future that I know we can get to. So thank you for coming tonight.
And I want to thank you all for being here. And like Jackie mentioned, she's got a lot of her team here if you'd like to get connected and sign up for the email. And I want to also just say that, you know, one of the things I've always felt is that markets can change people's behavior. And I think if we can get important people to do important things that really, you know, utilize our resources, and Aspen has incredible resources, you know, we have to invest in climate change initiatives. And Jackie's group is an easy step in the right direction. And thank you all for coming. Alex Broff on DJ right here. Best music in town. We're all going to hang out and enjoy yourself. Thank you. Rock and roll. Yeah, DJ.